and business and projects are the same to be successful. So in project terms, you need to build the team, build the plan, deliver the project. Always in that order, Nigel, always in that order. Most people will skip one of those things, right? So they'll either go straight to delivery and then they'll go back and do the planning. So they miss the team building thing. They'll build the team and just get straight into delivering the project and the plan will be done on the fly, or they'll have a business case signed off and that will, effectively become the plan. And then they never really deliver it because they don't really know what it is, although there's a lot of people saying that what they need to do. Listen, there are six pillars of team culture. Now you'll recognize some of these. When I wrote Culture Fix in 2019, I researched so many organizations and they all had these six things in common, right? So every culture has a vision. Now, sometimes that's the organization's vision, Nigel. So the organization, when I worked for Littlewoods Shop Direct Group, #1 online retailer in the UK, that was our vision. You can then create your own vision as long as it lines up to that. So, every project that I ran, we came up with a short vision statement, right? That's vision is pillar one, vision or purpose, right? Sometimes there's two, but vision or purpose. The second pillar is values. So what are the emotional connections? Now, these are often the things that the organization tells us what the values are, which is fine. If that's what they want to do, it's better if they involve us. But if they want to tell us, okay, at least what that does, it becomes a guardrail to sort of say, okay, well, you need to build these into your team culture. The third pillar is personality and communication. So this is every member of the team understanding the strengths, their opportunities for improvement, and how to communicate with each other. And so that speaks to the fact that there are some people who are more direct, there are some people who are quieter, there are some people who are more charismatic, and there are some people that just, kind of really like to build harmony. We're essentially, don't want to get into the science of it, but essentially about four personalities. Anybody who's ever done a disc
Start talking
profile
about the
will know
disc
that.
profiles, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
exactly. And I love the disc profiles. They're so powerful to be able to understand. I always describe them. I've said it on here before. Helps me understand why I think you're a dickhead and why you think I'm a dickhead, and
That's right.
it works perfectly for me.
That's right.
And
But
then
the thing we always miss, though, Nigel, is they're great at generating self-awareness, which is fabulous because self-aware individuals are building blocks of great teams. But it no one then teaches us. I mean, I do as part of my program. It's become a plug for my program, not my book here. But then I teach people how to communicate to different personalities. So, if you're quieter, how do I get the best out of you? Well, I can't be this charismatic Tigger type personality that I am normally. So that's the third pillar, right? Is everybody understanding each other? And once you've got that understanding, then you need to define how you're going to behave, right? So what's appropriate, what's not appropriate for this team. So for example, I worked with 300 engineers, right? A team of 300 engineers. What's appropriate for those guys, male and female, what's appropriate for those guys is different than what was appropriate for a HR team that I worked with in the US. Completely different. And that's fine. As long as it's in line with policy, as long as no one's going over, as long as the values are upheld, right? So behavior. So for example, that engineers, effing and jeffing, not a problem for them. HR team in US, definitely not. So that's number 4. Number 5 is collaboration. So how are we going to work together? So how are we going to meet? What workshops are we going to do? What technology are we going to use? What does our workspace look like? When are we going to be together in person? When can we be apart? All of that stuff, right? But also, what's an email? What's a Teams message? What's a face-to-face call? What's a face-to-face, input? All of that gets defined as part of collaboration. And then the last pillar is innovation. So how are we going to be creative about the way that we work together such that we can, kind of constantly evolve our culture? All of those 6 things are in all of the best teams, Nigel, all of them. And everything that I just said there, for a team of, say, 20 people, you can do all of that in a day. I've done it all in a day. I'm doing it in a day in Germany next week. 2 days is best because then you really get to build some solid relationships. But if you've only got a day, and that's all it takes. And that is how you build a team. Then you can work with that team to build the plan. and then you can go and deliver whatever it is you need to do. And you only have to look at one of the highest performing teams at the minute. It's a team called Manchester City football team. Pep Guardiola and Kevin De Bruyne, the manager and one of the best players, had an argument on the pitch last season, and they were both asked about it at the end of the game. And Pep Guardiola says, "Yeah, that's what we do." And Kevin De Bruyne was like, "Well, yeah, that's what we do. We're a really high performing team. We have to challenge each other all of the time." He said, "But this is our culture. This is how we hold each other to account, and that's why we're one of the best teams in the world." Spot on.
Yeah, you've got to have, and I've done it. I've had it before when I've had a stand-up argument with part of my team, and then after that they're going, "Oh, sorry about that," and they were being frank and direct to me, and I'm like, "It's fine. You were
Yeah.
right. Do you know what I mean? You were right." And I was kind of like, "You're right to push me. I'm not always right," and I think it is difficult to you need to make. I really think I need to be better at this. I'm just thinking about pieces of work coming up in the future, but it's kind of like how I do that. And like you say, that's the first day and convincing people to spend the whole day chatting about it. But as you say, rather than rolling the sleeves up and getting going, these project kickoffs that every project's meant to have. But so often I know, and what you said there is, we haven't done all those three things in a controlled manner, and we've hit the ground running because we're behind schedule before we start. There's less people available. We haven't got a whole team. You've got all these different reasons why to do it, but it's kind of then a case of it's making the best of it, isn't it? Of going right, okay. So we may not have started great, but okay, it might take us a week or 2 weeks to put these operating procedures for the team in place. And that means the first 2 weeks aren't great, but at least you're doing it. And I think it's something about project kickoffs drive that a lot. And I've seen it with meetings as well, where you have the manager tool guys talk about setting agendas and setting agreed behaviours in the meeting with the people in the meeting. And it's a similar sort of thing, but it's a culture for that one meeting of, right, phones are off, chuck them in the bowl, whatever, we're not going to answer phones. Anything that's not pertinent to do with what we're on about, stick it on the board. We'll talk about it later. We won't carry on and talk about it if it's not relevant to what our objective is. We agree the objective. You don't talk over everyone. Everyone that contributes, and you know what I mean. You can set those ground rules for a meeting, but what you don't do, and you kind of the way they do it is say, right, okay, so what's a reasonable behaviour for this meeting? Is it okay for everyone to be on their phone instead of being involved? And everyone will go, well, no, we need everyone concentrating and focusing. Okay, so that's your rule, no phones. it's that group's rule, not the person facilitating's rule. It's the people's rule. So if you say, what happens when someone's waffling on about something and going back over the point? What do we say? Yeah, do we say right waffle? Do we say, hold on, we've covered that? Do we? So we make the meeting as efficient as we can. And I don't think I certainly don't do that enough. I have done something like that before now. But because you get your teams meetings and they feel a little bit informal, that behaviour on the call, we've done it. I do it. I'm sure you've done it. Everyone does it. You'll be doing an email while you're on the call because they're talking about something that isn't your pertinent thing. And then suddenly it's gone to your thing and they've asked you what you think about it and you're going, I was sorry, I wasn't. I was just answering an I am. Sorry. And some people just blag it sometimes. And I find it's not a good idea to blag it and hope you're answering the question you were asked. Just admit you've done it and then go, actually, me behaving like that? Is that what I would want others to do if that was my meeting? And the answer is no.
Yeah, yeah. The kickoff analogy is a good one. You can't kick off any kind of game or any kind of sport without the team agreeing how they're going to play together. It's just you just can't do it, right? There's a consulting firm, Nigel, who bring me in pretty much everything before they start a big piece of work, and they ask me to facilitate a culture workshop, right? And at the end of it, we agree a culture charter. I did one. They're just starting an AI project with a new client, a big client of theirs, and so they brought me in to do the culture workshop. And of course, AI is the latest thing which is going to affect workplace cultures, of course it is. But people still don't know how to run meetings. They don't know how to use emails. It's fascinating to me, it really is. But one of the behaviours that they agreed, so I always get them to agree 5 behaviours as part of the culture, the things that they really need to demonstrate if they're to achieve the goals that they've got. One of their behaviours was respect. And so, kind of the next part of the workshop after that is I talk about the practical things that they are going to do as a team in order to demonstrate the behavior of respect. You can't just say, we've got a behavior of respect, and then get someone to list a load of bullet points. So, the team has to agree, what does it mean? And things come up like, when you're on a Teams call, you close all other applications. So immediately you've set a standard to hold yourself to, so that it's the meet and cheers job then, which is also another basic management skill that people often don't have. But it's the meet and cheers job to remind people of the standards, not the rules, the standards that we've set for this culture. And so all of a sudden you're kicking off in line with a charter that the entire team have created. Not only have they created it, they're really excited about it because they were part of it. They remember the 1 or 2 day workshop and it was great. They know the people that they're going to be working with, so they have empathy, which is great for trust. They've made some agreements about how they're going to use their productive time so that they time box when they're going to meet and they keep the amount of meetings to a minimum. They've agreed how they're going to communicate. So all of a sudden you can see, without giving away all of the content of my workshop, but all of a sudden it's immediately 50 to 60% better, to the point where I can guarantee when I do my workshops an uplift in performance, because I'm getting people to agree with each other on how they'll work, knowing that when they leave the room, they'll go, well, we agreed that, so we should do that. And, it works every time.
Yeah, and when you're getting that sort of, even if you're getting 10% improvement, 20% improvement, that's a massive lever. If you're able as an organization to get every member of your team and every team to be 20% more productive and 20% more effective, or freeing up 20% more of their headspace to be able to think further ahead, well, that's massive, isn't it? Just that whole so if you can do that, you've got 20% more than you had last year.
It's
So that
Nigel.
means
Yeah.
it keeps going higher and higher because you're just leveraging more. And it's all about leverage, isn't it?
It's all about leverage and it's all about evolution. Most organizations talk about culture change. Cultures don't change, they evolve. And they either evolve positively or negatively based on what people see above them. And so if you do an engagement survey and the score is, let's say, I don't know, let's be positive and say it's 60%. If the leaders then say, okay, well, we want to get it to 85, which is where the really best great cultures are, we're now going to invest in something different and give managers a new skill set, one that's fit for 2024 and beyond. Immediately you get a 5% lift in engagement because people are like, oh, well, they listened. We're not doing the same old stuff that we do all of the time. And actually, I feel a greater sense of belonging. Then you do these programs, right? And so when I deliver my program, people leave with a new skill set and they're like, well, that was awesome. And it's always awesome because they're getting something that they've never had before that will immediately add value to their day-to-day lives, because who doesn't
Yeah.
want that in work? And that reflects back onto the leadership team. So every time people say, "Oh, right, so it's going to cost this," oh, what do I get back? I was like, you get back the respect of every employee because you listen to them. You're doing something different. You're adding value to their lives. You're enhancing their sense of belonging. They're better able to deliver the things that you expect of them. And actually, you win as well because people are more productive, they're more engaged, they're happier, and so are you.
Yeah, it feels like a no-brainer, and it's kind of one of those hygiene factors, isn't it? Of looking after your own health and eating better, exercising more, sleeping better. All these things we know we should do better, and I know, and I'm trying to do that at the moment. But still, on Monday evening, after I pop back from guitar practice, pop to the pub as I do, just have one, very sensible. Then I got home and sat and played for 2 hours on the Xbox playing Wrexham football game as football manager because I thought I'll have 10 minutes, I'll be fine. And those you lapse, don't you, into those behaviors that aren't the right ones for you as an organization, the right ones. So I find myself where I will, now you talked about your plan, your people, your team. I've had situations where I've got a team together, that's great. But because of different situations, we had to hit the ground running and get going with it. And we thought, right, okay, so we'll get these started. We'll start that. And then we can pick up the longer term planning later. Problem is that noise and that furore of stuff that you've started means that you've got to be dealing with that. You've got day to day things. And that sometimes, like with a project, you've got to sit there and go, we're not going to do anything for a month because we've got to work out what we're doing and when we're doing it. But the difficulty is you're on the back foot because your customer, your manager, your stakeholders want that now, and they want to see action, and they don't always see that planning as action. But as a leader in a team, sometimes you've got to have those hard conversations, and I've failed to do that more times than I can mention. I've sat there and gone, "Oh, you've done it again, Nige. Why don't you just tell everyone stop? We need to replan this."
Yeah,
and it's hard. It's really hard to step back and turn around to someone and go, "We're in a mess. We need 2 weeks to replan." Because I heard someone say, if you haven't got 2 weeks to replan it, you ain't going to deliver it, because that means you haven't got 2 weeks worth of slip and contingency in what you're doing already. So you're going to fail anyway. So actually, it's probably better to stop for 2 weeks, relook at what you're doing, reassess what you can and can't do, reset expectations, and then move forward. And that sounds the same with the culture thing of going, you can forever go, well, we're too busy. We haven't got enough people to be able to do this. We haven't got the funds to do that yet. We haven't got the right managers in place in order to do this training. We don't want to train these guys who we're going to get rid of. I'm just supposing that organisations do that, where they'll sit there sometimes going, well, we haven't got our management team in that we want in yet. When we've got that full management team in, then we'll start looking at the culture. And you kind of those sort of things, those hygiene things, those doing the things you should do that, like you're talking about, is those managers might be the right managers if you get the culture right coming up. I don't know.
yeah, 100%. Organisations use these excuses all of the time, Nigel. Oh, we'll wait till the operating model's changed. We'll wait till the strategy's produced. We'll wait. One of the things that I'm most proud of is I was asked to pick up an ALIM program, mid 2010s, and I had a reputation, as you'd expect, for building really good teams, and they asked me to kind of rebuild the team and then replan this big major project. It was, I don't know, about $500 million, something like that. And I said, yeah, sure. I was like, I'm going to need 1 whole week to build the team, and then it's probably going to take me between 2 to 4 weeks to replan. And the guy laughed and he said, you've got 1 week to do the lot. And I just said, no, thanks. And he said, what do you mean? I was like, I can't do. I was like, if you want me to deliver this, let's just say that it was by the end of November, and it was like, I don't know, March. I was like, if you want me to deliver this by the end of November, I need to spend a week just rebuilding the team, because that's what you just said. And then I need to spend about a month replanning in order to deliver it in November. And he said, but we haven't got that amount of time. I was like, yeah, we have, because it's still going to get delivered at the end of November. He was just like, but don't we just get on and do it? I was like, no, that's the mistake that people make time and time again. We have to reconnect the people. We have to agree how we're going to work together before we then replan, because then we can have courageous conversations. We can reset expectations. We can talk about how we're going to collaborate in order to hit all of these milestones. And he said, okay, he said, all right, that's fine. You take the approach. I was like, okay, great. I was like, I also need to fly the entire team from India to here. I need accommodation. I need flights. I'll need a room. I'll need all of these resources. He said, you've just put 100K on cost on the project. I was like, you'll get it all back at the end. This is coming in under budget. Because if we invest this amount of time and effort, up front, you'll get it all back at the end, because we're way more efficient, way more productive. Anyway, long story. They agreed to all of that. It was a bit of a dogfight, but they agreed to it all. And I flew the team from India. It was brilliant. We had a brilliant week just getting to know each other. We did some random things. But we agreed our culture. We talked about the different social cultures we were working in. There was an Australian one, New Zealand, English, Indian, and we were mixing all of these cultures together. So I did a session on that, and we delivered the outputs 2 weeks early, and we did it. So we delivered it under time and under budget. About it, I think it was about 210,000 on the budget. And the manager, the deputy CEO said, "So that's the way that you do this." I was like, "Yeah, that's the way that you do it." And then, to my mind, they never did it again after that. they made it in the paper about 3 years later for being always over time and budget. I'm like, you learn nothing, nothing.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's a really courageous conversation that you've had there as a project manager to going into, and it's really depending in the nature of what you're going in. I don't know whether you were going in independent there or you're part of that organization. When you're going in and you're part of an organization, to be able to turn around and go, you've got the JFDI sort of
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah,
Uh, it, you kind of sit there going, but you don't believe you can do it. Team don't believe you can do it. We're not going to do it. Do you know what I mean? And that's where the flip side of that is you get the team, make sure the team know who they are, and then you ask them, how do we do it? Not get it done. It's how do we do this? And it becomes a different conversation, doesn't it? About, right, what's the art of the possible? How are we going to, and I know a lot of people hate that phrase, but it is a case of, right, we're not asking when we're going to do it. How do we make that date? Not can we make that date? Take the rule book away. What can we do to make that happen?
yeah,
And then you can start being innovative and finding ways to do it and going, well, we turn to the customer and we say, well, the stakeholder and say, we don't get it all today. You get most of it that date. And the other bit, you don't need that date. You get a bit later. And that's a
yeah,
conversation I think a lot of people have difficulty with project management is you sit there going, well, we've got to hit that date. Yeah, but have you really got to hit that date? Is that really going to deliver you business value on that date more than for everything? And 9 times out of 10, all of the features that they're asked for aren't delivering business value on day one. That's
yeah.
my
It's a challenge, Nigel. I got asked a question at a conference in the US about it was a project management conference. Listen, there's no bigger supporter of project management than me. I absolutely loved my career in project management, and the fact that there aren't more CEOs as ex-project managers, I think, is a failure of the profession in some way. Um, and this person asked me, what happens if you get given another project and you don't have the capacity for it? And I said, my answer was, you say no. She's like, but you can't. I was like, but you can. I was like, there are just different ways to say no. I was like, your integrity is going to be compromised by the fact that you can't deliver what's being asked of you. So I always say, I've got the capacity to deliver 3 projects. You just give me a fourth. Which one do you want to drop? And she said, oh, they'll tell me I have to do all 4. It's like, well, you just say I can't. He's like, but how do I do that? I was like, you say, I don't have enough hours in the day. I was like, no one's going to get sacked. And if you do get sacked for that, it's not a company you want to work for. This is a company that wants to kill you through overwork.
yeah.
And I had a good conversation with her afterwards, and we came up with a bit of a strategy. And anyway, she emailed me later and she said, oh, yeah, they gave me that project. I said, did you follow through in the strategy? She said, yeah. And I said, what happened? They said, okay, yeah, that's fine.
And
She
I think
said, and
that's
I built this story in my head that
yeah.
I couldn't say no. And I did it that way. And they were like, okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll find someone else.
Yeah. I've been there. I've seen that, and I've been in that situation where you think that you have no choice.
You
And I've
have
had
to, yeah.
conversations with managers, and they've said to me, "What you need to be able to do, Nigel, is when you can't do it, you need to ask for help." And
Yeah.
I've been the one that's trying to carry everything on the weight of my shoulders instead of turning to my boss and going, "I need help," because you think you're a failure because you're going to your boss to
That's
ask for
right.
help in that
Yeah.
environment. Whereas you should be saying, "Actually, this is harder than I thought. It's bigger than I thought.
Yeah.
I need some help," and you've got to do that, and it's something we really need to. So I'm just looking at the time here, and we haven't even talked. We've hardly, in passing, we've mentioned your new book.
Yes. We
Do you
should
want
give
to
that a plug before we
Yeah,
finish.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think it would be a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not very good at promoting. I feel like it's been a massive plug for my culture programs. Um, But let me talk very, very briefly about why I wrote the book. So rather than say everyone should go out and buy it, which they should, um, is that so toxic. So 1 in 4 people dreads going to work, right? Which is terrible. It's awful. People high levels of stress are 22 times more prone to suicidal thoughts, which is awful. And so Nigel, I've read all of these stories about toxic cultures. Now, the media culture used to be a black box. It never used to be visible to the outside world. But now the media takes a very, very active interest in it. Whether it's Boeing, the Confederation of British Industry, the Post Office, Met Police. Oh my God, the Met Police. Strictly Come Dancing. I was asked to comment on that for the Mirror recently. Grenfell, I just read the Grenfell report, a horrible failure of corporate culture. And so what I wanted to do, it was to write the book to say, here's what happened and here's how you avoid it. Like I wanted to provide a case study, some context, but then, and this is the 15th time we've talked. I always write how-to books. That's something I'm really proud of, and I don't want to leave people hanging for the answer. And so I don't want people to dread going to work. I don't want people to have suicidal thoughts. What I want is for senior leaders and for managers to have something that they can use so that they know what the warning signs are and they can actively create a culture that doesn't have any form of toxicity in it. Or if they notice the signs, they know what to do. So that was my real motivation for writing the book, is to provide people with a bit of a how-to manual of how to avoid the conditions for toxic culture, in the hope that it improves the mental and physical health of employees everywhere.
Brilliant. One of the things that I have heard, and toxic has become a little bit of a buzzword sometimes, isn't it? In that people say it's a toxic culture, it's toxic behaviour, toxic masculinity, everything. So it gets tagged onto a lot of things. And what, again, I'm going to go for you for a definition kind of thing. Is what do you, when you look at from a culture perspective in organisations, what do you see as that kind of toxic behaviour? And I know that there's going to be a lot of variety on there, but what is it you would say that would define and sort of call that out?
Yeah, I think it's really difficult, Nigel. I think often people want this really definitive answer, and there isn't one, because what's toxic for you might not be toxic for me. The point that I make in the book, that if anybody makes any allegation of toxicity, the company has an obligation to investigate it and find out whether it's actually warranted or not. I'll give you a good example. So after the Philip Schofield This Morning kind of debacle, which people remember from a couple of years ago, there was an allegation that the This Morning culture, was it This Morning or Good Morning? I think it was This Morning, wasn't it? There was an allegation that the This Morning culture was toxic, which then Martin Sixsmith made worse because he was doorstepped. And he said, you know what's toxic? Aubergine. I don't like aubergine. Do you like aubergine? And then the media basically accused him of kind of basically covering it up, or gaslighting those that had made the allegations. Actually, ITV did a really good job and I talk about this in the book. They did a really good job of investigating it, and they found that the culture wasn't toxic, and it wasn't. I've read the reports; it wasn't toxic. However, I could understand why people would have felt that. There are also some other people, and I do talk about this in the book, who try and use toxic culture narratives as a stick to beat their organization with, which is why it's even more important that they're investigated in the right way. For me, Nigel, as soon as 3 people say the culture's toxic, senior leaders should be worried. They should be, especially if it's a team of 4 people. But they should be worried. And this was the case with the CBI. The CBI chose to ignore it. They swept it under the carpet in the hope that it would go away, and it didn't. And to the point where CBI's customers completely lost confidence in them as a business. And it almost killed the Confederation of British Industry, the fact that they didn't deal with their toxic culture. So yes, we can, and we can level a toxic term at anything, really. You know, I worked with an organisation not so long ago who'd done a diversity, equity and inclusion training programme, which they'd got so badly wrong. And people basically left the training programme thinking that they were racists. Men felt that they were being told that they were misogynists. It was so bad the way that they'd done it. I was like, well, the culture isn't toxic, but the way that you delivered the training and the communication around it was really poor. And so it's about, where's the line, where's the definition, and then,
Why
what
I
are we
ask,
then
because
going to do to correct it?
yeah, because that's why I ask, because it is something that you kind of ease. What one person would describe as a toxic culture was actually is a very demanding culture that
Yeah,
that they're new into potentially, and you have a group that are really pushing each other. And it's really interesting that some of it can be used. Certainly, newspaper results and reports and things like that are always there will always be a used as a buzzword in in the headline and things like that as a clickbait and things like that. And I just thought it'd be useful to understand that, because it's something that you kind of think, well, how do you avoid it? That's really good. Looking at where the as a manager in a team, as a manager in an organization, as a leader of a large organization, being able to spot where something isn't quite right and know that you can look at it and go, well, actually, that's a little bit of might be symbolistic of something that's creating a culture that's going there. So what is it? What can I do? Have I sent direction? Have I given, like I've been in organizations where um, a very senior person has said, oh, it'd be nice if that happened. And that got translated 2 or 3 layers down as being, this is the most important thing. This is the number one priority from this person. And then when delivered to that person, they go, oh, wow, cool. That's all right. But it wasn't their number one priority, but it ended up being assumed that it
yeah,
was.
yeah.
And kind of then people pulling people and quite, the toxic is probably too strong a word, but maybe it would be classed as that now, of where you've got people really on the border of you would say they're a bit of a bully to people. In hindsight, when I look back on that, and you think actually that is, I think actually the behaviour then compared to the behaviour now, I don't think it would be tolerated. Certainly from back then, and I think there's been a
Yeah.
big change. I think in the last 5 years in all of this, really, isn't there?
5 years, definitely. Yeah, I talk about the fact that the world has changed significantly in the last 5 years,
Yeah,
Nigel, and some
yeah,
people have yet to catch up.
yeah.
And they really do need to get their behaviours in check, realise what's appropriate, what's not appropriate for 2024 and beyond. And those people that don't will eventually make themselves redundant because they're not prepared to change for the way that we work now.
Yeah, and a change is hard, and we should all. And I think the thing that I've found is that when you've got to change with these things, you make mistakes, and when you make a mistake, well, that's fine, make a mistake, and then
As long as it's not the same
adjust
one,
again,
as
and
long
then
as it's not the same mistake, you're all good.
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah, and that's it, isn't it? If you keep making the same mistake over and over and over again, something going wrong there. But generally,
Well, Boeing are a great example. Same mistake. They had a plane crash in 2018, didn't address the cultural failings. They had another one crash in 2019, didn't address the cultural failings. And then a door blew out of one in 2021. Same things over and over again. And then people were surprised when the CEO was stepped down. Like, he should have gone after 2019.
yeah,
Crazy.
yeah. You think in those scenarios, you just go right, okay. Um, I need to step away.
Yeah,
Well, Colin, we're now at just over an hour. Thank you for giving me so much time as ever and giving me such an insightful conversation. Buy Colin's book. It's Detox Your Culture. It's available now, isn't it?
it is available now.
There'll be a link in the show notes for anyone who wants to click from that. Um, at all good bookstores and some rubbish ones as well, I guess, is the
Absolutely.
usual
Hey, it's a
answer.
good soccer AM.
Yeah. I haven't watched that. I used to love watching that show. Um, the was there anything you wanted to cover that we didn't talk about? And I know you could probably talk 4 hours on detox, on culture in general. But was there anything you wanted to mention today?
No, I just a final reminder that culture is, if you're a manager, culture is your legacy. It's what you're known for. And a reminder that you have agency over it. So, work with your team to build something special. They'll never forget you for it, and they'll always work for it.
That's fantastic advice. Thanks, Colin. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do so?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Nigel. I'd encourage it. I created a quiz earlier this year to help people understand what kind of culture that they have. They might like that. It's called the 5 Cultures Quiz. So you go to 5culturesquiz.com if you go there. And that'll also take you to my website as well. There'll be a link there if you want to find out more about me. Otherwise, yeah, you can find my books on Amazon.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for so much time again, and you have a wonderful rest of your evening.
Thank you,
Colin.
Nigel. You too. Cheers.
So I have a number of sponsors, affiliate links in the way that it's set up that have kindly allowed me to share their services, really. The first one is Mike Clayton, and Mike runs online PM courses, and it is a great resource for getting those fundamentals of project management trained, reasonably priced, and Mike presents it in an accessible and clear manner. You can check out some of his videos on his YouTube channel and kind of give you a view of where they are. But the code for that, if you go to nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, all one word, lowercase, that'll redirect you to it. There's varying different levels that you can buy. You can buy individual courses, you can buy pathways as well, if you like. And I get a kickback off those. Mike kindly shares me that. So if you do jump on and use it, I hope you find it really useful. I think he has money back guarantees and things like that as well. So there's very limited risk on that. So jump on that, and that again, it's nigelcreaser.com/online PM courses, and enjoy.